pensive. So as we are already aware about all the basics and overall overview for the particular YAML file and the components of YAML file, the task, config and where, we're gonna take it further with some practical approach. We're gonna take one single placeholder or one single component at a time, and we're gonna understand the structure. For the same, let's just get started. I'm gonna switch to my code, and just to give you a nudge, my code has GitHub Copilot installed. That is gonna help me make few things easier when it comes to creating workflows and some automation tasks. So what I'm gonna do, I already created the demo folder. I'm gonna start by creating new YAML file, and let's make it demo1.yaml. Okay, you can have different. It's totally up to you. Not something required. And we already know there are three major components for the same. First one is config, that is necessary. Second one here is the where. The third one here is tasks. These are the three major components for the particular tasking the workflow. Let me quick change my screen to VM, where you'll see this graph. First one is the task, second one is config, and the third one is wheres. Within the wheres, as we already saw those workflows here, just open any one so you'll get an idea. First is config, second one is where, and the third one is the task. Of course, those are really something that will gonna be uh, strict in terms of comparing the words, like capital, small, and it has to be all small by default. So now config has multiple components. The first component, let me just switch my screen a bit. First, here, config has few components. First one is name, author, usage, shell, default image, hive, and logs. So let's start by defining few: name, author, and usage. We can of course copy few things from here. That will be easier. What I'm gonna do, I'll quickly copy it. That is gonna be a time saver. And let me just change my screen to code. And here we go. Perfect. This seems to be fine. What we're gonna doing, the first name, what name you want to be specified here. So for an example, I just want to keep it as a demo or demo one. Author, if you have your own name, yeah, you can write it. So I'm gonna go with, let's say, Ruben Siv. Totally up to you. Task Ninja, if you think the binary name is something different, then yeah, you can just keep it. What about the usage you want to be specified here? Here it has a URL list. I'll just gonna specify, let's say, uh, or let me just keep it something common as a target. And target, you want something to be supplied here. For an example, xy example.com. Let's say, let's keep that one only. The file name is demo1.yaml, so I'll just gonna keep it same. And default image is Alpine latest. You have to make sure that your Docker is running, and if it is, then yeah, you're not gonna find any error. The next here, where. So as you have specified here the target, you have to specify within the where or variables basically. So target, you can supply just oops, an empty value which will automatically ask when you execute this workflow, and that is what we're gonna be learning. And let's make one task, and for task it requires name. So let me just give you task one. Image Alpine latest. If you don't want any image, then just remove it. And it has multiple components. First is name, second one is not the command here, this is wrong, it will be cmds, and it is type of list. You cannot supply as direct. Go, seems to be fine. Let's just keep it silent as false because I want to see the output. Okay, so this is the task one, and it will gonna echo Instead of hello world, what I'm gonna do, I'll replace with the variable value that it has. For an example, I want to replace it with the target. Here we go. Perfect. So what it will gonna do, it will gonna echo whatever target you specify, whatever text you specify, and it will gonna show up in the screen output. If everything's fine, then this workflow must be executed. So let me just cd into demo and let's just execute it. So /go bin task ninja hyphen workflow hyphen nb for no banner. It will gonna be save a little bit of my screen space hyphen workflow, and let me just provide this demo one here. So if you don't specify anything, it will gonna give you an error saying that error missing variable value and variables that requires a target. So let's assume that there is other than this target, an example target 2, and it is also empty that you have supplied. Now if I execute, it will gonna give you that hey, target and target 2 both has to be supplied. So there are missing values. I'll remove it for now in case if it is required, then yeah, I'll gonna edit. Everything seems to be fine. What I have to do, I have to supply the variable value. And how I can do it, it's pretty much simple. You just have to type v for variable and the variable name. Target equals to whatever it is. For an example, I've specified Rebensive rocks. And if I hit enter, it starts, it prints out that value, and it works. Now this entire process is being conducted within the Docker image. It's not something like executing on this on the current machine. It is booting up one Docker image, Docker container, and it is executing that particular code over the same, and it will gonna be working like that. By default, whatever the output is, it will gonna be saved inside the Hive. Right now there is no input, there is no output, but if you want something to be output, that will gonna look in a bit. So yeah, you can use this in an output. Currently just understand this. If you want to enable logs, so let me just do it, make it through. So what I'm gonna do, it will gonna create logs directory. So let me execute this one more time and you will find the difference. Now within this Hive directory there will be a log. It's not updated yet. So I have to just refresh, and here we go. The log. Whatever the standard error, it will gonna be inside this file. Standard output will be in this file, and we know that standard output does have this particular line of code. If it does have any error, for an example, let me just make something that it gives me an error. So let me just do it like echoes instead of echo. There is no echoes, right? So if I try execute this time, it will gonna be an error. As you see, it shows that echoes not found. So now, yeah, this particular file output will gonna be saved within the standard error. And yeah, standard output will gonna be completely empty because there is no standard output. It will be gonna be sent to standard error. If there is any standard error, it will gonna be saved inside the standard error. It's good for debugging purpose. So we learned about two different flags. One is log, and another one is, of course, we got to know about the silent. There are multiple others: name, author, user, default image. That's pretty much straightforward. Also the variables how you can supply and you can reuse in the code. So for an example, if you have defined something in the variable you want to reuse inside the cmd, then yeah, you can do it. It's pretty straightforward. You just have to use this curly braces twice and that will gonna be sufficient enough. Hope that makes sense to you. Now let me just quick shift to my VM for that particular code, particular flowchart, and to understand the different thing. So here, Hive is a default, as I mentioned. Let me just try to change it to something to just to understand, show you some examples. I'm switching back to my code. Here we go. I'll just gonna create, let's say, Hive, and I want to specify Hive name. Let's me just take it as Hive 1. Last time it was Hive, everything was saved inside Hive. Let's say you want this workflow output data should be saved inside this folder. So yeah, you can just define. If I hit execute, we go. you'll find this hive one here. Now let's see the other arguments that are required and that are good to know. So here we know about name, author, usage, shell. Shell is not something that will gonna be often used, but yeah, you can use it for your own purpose, but that will not gonna be something really important to go for. Default image, we know that default image will gonna be used. So by default, you're gonna use Alpine, that is the minimal version of a particular Docker images that it's like very small in size and have few tools that are required. So if you want something additional, you can create your own Docker image that will gonna be having that particular software installed, and yeah, so on and so forth. We learned about this hive, we learned about logs, how you can enable and disable logging, and that will gonna help you to debug purpose. And one more thing that I want to highlight. So let me just move back to my code. Here. Now, when there is an error, for example, let's say echoes, and if silent is false, silent is true, then you might not gonna see any error at all. Even though it gives you an error, it shows as succeed because it works like that. It will gonna just boot up one Docker image, Docker container, and it will gonna just succeed. It'll gonna go for succeed when there is a log is returned from that particular machine and machine is stopped. It will just gonna wait till the machine is stopped like that. However, you have the log features to debug whether any error or not. For an example, you want to debug if a particular task is not working well, you can either do is like a name, just make this silent false and just execute it. So you'll get to know about there is an error, what error exactly it is. Just for an example, you are running subfinder and you have specified some argument. You want to identify there is an error in the subdomain subfinder tool. So you can just cancel this silent flag and that would be sufficient. That's being said, let's move further for understanding different tasks, because of this vars are nothing but different variable values and tasks are the one that we're gonna be learning further. Being said, let's proceed further with our graphical. Let me just move slightly right here. So the name, as we know, it will just gonna be task name, and task name will gonna be your Docker image name. So what do I mean? Let me just show you here. I'll navigate here. I'll just gonna do is like sleep for 20 seconds, or let's say 10 seconds. It'll not gonna do anything. It'll just gonna sleep for 10 seconds. And what I'm gonna do, I'll create one more here that will gonna be watching Docker container. Right now, there is no Docker container running. However, as soon as I execute this, you will gonna find that there is one Docker container running with the name as task one, task hyphen one. As there is a space, space will gonna be replaced with hyphen, and yeah, this is how it works. You see, it's done. So that is how this particular thing works. Let me move back to my VM. We know about the name, how the name works, and must be unique for all, because if it is the same, it will gonna be create some issues and it may not gonna be executed. It will just bring you the error saying that, hey, there is a duplicate entry for this. So that is for validation of your workflow. The next here is image that you want to be used for a certain execution. For an example, let me just show you one. I'll be moving back to my code. Right now, it uses the default image, right? And I want to use a different image for this task. For an example, image, I want to use Rubensu slash, let's say, uh, you anything. Let me just find something. Rubensu. I have multiple Docker. I'll just gonna quickly navigate through it. Just a moment. I'm finding the one that are good. and easiest here. Let me go with the Go. And the latest, what we're gonna doing, it will gonna utilizing this Go. Go will gonna be requiring some inputs and output. So for an example, it wants one target to be input and output in the particular file. So I'll just gonna specify here as a target, and I want the output to be saved in in a particular file. So for an example, right now I'll just gonna specify hive out. Hive out is a specific is a spatial location or a folder that is unique for each task. And if I just add any file name next to it, it will gonna be saved with that particular name. I would recommend to go and specify output.txt because there is certain commands that we're gonna be learning further that will be easier with this particular approach. Hive out and output.txt because this is a default file location. So what it's gonna do, it will gonna whatever target you specify, it will gonna run this particular Docker container through this image, and it will gonna be displaying result. So what I'm gonna do, instead of Bensive rocks as a target, I'm gonna supply, let's say, Herman.com. Herman.com is from the Herman International JBL that you might have heard. So let me just give it a go. Right now the silent is false, so whatever the output is will gonna be displayed. So that's something to tell you. Let's wait for a moment because sometimes it takes a little extra time for filtering because the GA works in that way. And yeah, you can always keep an eye over the same. The task one has this particular GA image running, and it's running from like 29 second, 31 second, and whatnot. You can even get a logs. So just type Docker container, not with the watch, Docker container log and hyphen follow and whatever the container name. For an example, right now task one is running, and here we go. It gives me the huge list of lines. Perfect. So it is done. It took almost like 56 seconds to discover a huge list. Okay. I'm not counting it right now, but yeah, it has a huge list. And as I use this hive out, the task one with the hive one as a folder, we're gonna have this output and output.txt. So whatever is the response, it will gonna automatically add it to the next code or to the output file. Of course, I've created the this particular Docker image in a way that it's gonna require two inputs. One will be your target, and the last will be your output file. And hive out is a spatial file, I can say, replacement that will gonna automatically select current task. It will gonna automatically create output folder if it is not required, if it is not available, and it will gonna reference that particular folder here. So it's gonna be, let's say, slash hive slash out. It's gonna be hive one, sorry, slash hive slash out slash output.txt. This is how it will gonna be working. So yeah, that was all about this image and how you can utilize. I'll just gonna switch back to the initial phase where we use the default image. And yeah, you are pretty, I hope that you're clear with the Docker image concept. Let me move back to my visuals. The next here is Docker Hive. Docker Hive is again spatial, not the spatial, but the specific for the task. You can specify the Docker Hive that will gonna be mounted. For an example, in the host Hive, we created Hive 1, but inside the Docker, it will gonna be by default slash hive, means in the root folder, it will gonna be hive. So for an example, if you want to use Docker from Zap, one example would be Zap. Zap want your mounted folder to be slash home slash that Zap user or work or something. I don't recollect, but yeah, it is something different than this hive. So using this Docker hive, you can reconfigure that particular thing that you want to be mounted. So we're going to be linking from host machine to the Docker container like that. CMDs is nothing but the command array or list of command, not array, list of commands that you want to be executed within the Docker. So for an example, let me just move back to my code. What do I mean by list? So here, just a moment. Okay, so the first task, let's say it will gonna do echo uh, whatever the output is, that is target, the input, not the output. Sorry. The next command I want, let's say I want this output to be saved somewhere. Let's say I want it to be saved to uh, hive out, and the folder would be output.txt. Now, let me just execute this one more time, and the output would be saved inside the output folder here. Now it has just one single line that has harman.com. I hope that it makes a little interest. So that's being said, let me just why it is useful. That is also important. So what you can do is you can even create, let's say you want to create one variable. For an example, I want to create var equals to dollar open bracket, close bracket, and whatever it is. Let's say I want to get all the processes. So ps hyphen aux. Okay, and you want to reuse this particular variable in the next line. Right. It could be anything. I'll give you some more example later on. I'm just giving you the simplest for now. So echo dollar variable, and it will gonna have whatever the process it has, it will gonna be displayed with this particular output. Right. So let me just go and execute. Here we go. There is an error, no problem. But yeah, this is how it works. Right. The error shows that something is wrong. No problem. But yeah, we get the response back. Right. So that's what important. That's being said, we'll go back to my VM for the next component. The next component is silent. Silent we already learned about. If silent is true, it will not gonna display anything, and it's just gonna be like start success. And if there is any error, then it will gonna be just stopping an error and so on and so forth. So that's being said. The next here is parallel. What this parallel will gonna be doing? Parallel will gonna put the particular task in a background. So let's just have some example for the same. What I'm gonna do, I'll move back to my code. Let me just bring up, let me remove those, and instead of the same, this time it will gonna be sleep for, let's say, 4 seconds, not 5. Let's say sleep for 4. So now this is task 1. Let me create one more task and make sure that that new task has to be with a different name. It will gonna be task 2, and this will again sleep for 4. Right now I haven't specified that parallel thing, and if I try to execute, let's just keep it minimal. It will gonna sleep for 1, sleep for 1. That will be faster for our education purpose. And let me just execute this. Over, it will start with the first, it will wait for 1 second because it has the sleep one, then it will move towards the next, and the response time is somewhere 5 seconds. However, when you supply this parallel and make it as true, it will keep the first task in the background and move for the next. Or it will just, yeah, it will keep this task to the background and move toward the next. Let me just execute it one more time. Last time it took 5.22. If I hit over, you see this first and second task both run together, and it took just 2 seconds somewhere, 2 point some seconds, in order to complete the entire process. Of course, it is more than the sleep one that you can execute on your system. But yeah, you can assume that this is gonna boot up container, mount something. It'll gonna take minor seconds. It's not a huge time, but yeah, it has a 1 second a little extra. Then you can execute, but it is not the purpose, right? So using this parallel, you can put a particular task in a parallel or in a background so that the next task can be executed. Now, if I create one more here, let's say that is with the task 3, it will wait for again sleep, it will wait for sleep 1, and if this particular task is false, then the next task is, let's say, even if it is true, not the silent, sorry, parallel. So let me just add it here. I'll say parallel false, edit here parallel true. So now task 1 has parallel true, task 2 has parallel false, and task 3 has parallel true. Now let's see how and what it'll gonna be doing. So first it executed task 2, task 1, and as task 2 has this parallel false, it will not gonna move further with the next. It will gonna be, as it is false, it will not gonna put it in the background, and it will gonna wait until this particular task is done. So what do I mean? So if it is, let's say this task 1, it will gonna wait for 3 seconds this time. This will just gonna be 1 second. And now let's see how it will gonna be. Earlier, first task 2 was task 1 and 2 both together started execution and finished almost at the same time. And then task 3 was executed. Now let's try one more time and see the differences. Task 1, 2, task 2 is finished, and as soon as task 2 is finished, task 3 has been initiated. As the upper task is mentioned as a parallel false, the next task will not gonna be executed until this particular task is finished. I hope that makes sense to you. That's being said, let's move back to uh, the VM and the graphical things. Perfect. So parallel is done. Required is the next. What it will gonna be doing? It will gonna wait until the particular task to be finished in order to move further. So let me just go back to my code and show you some examples. Here we go. So now, as we saw, the task 3 was executed immediately after task 2. I'll just gonna add that task 2 here. Let me just do it. Required requires task 1 and task 2. What do I do? It will gonna be waiting for task 2 and task 1 to be finished. It's not requires, it is required task 1 and task 2, and once both are done, then after task 3 will gonna be executed. Let me just do it shortly. So as you see, task 2, task 1, task 2 is finished. Still task 2, 3 didn't execute it. It waited for task 1. And you can get the detailed output by just specifying detailed. And if I hit over, you'll find some better explanation. So here, task info, it says task is static. As soon as task 2 is finished, it says there are required tasks, task 1 and task 2 for the particular task name, that is task 3. It wants task 1 and task 2 to be finished in order to proceed further. And as soon as task 1 is finished, this particular task was initiated. And as it is done, it will gonna be, of course, completed. That's being said, let's move towards the next component. Here we got to know about required. The next here is the timeout. So let me just quickly go and try that. What timeout we're gonna be doing? So yeah, if you want a particular task to be finished within certain time, or you want to be keeping a maximum time a particular task could take, then you can use this. So what I'm gonna do, I'll just gonna remove those two different tasks which was created, and the sleep 3 is fine. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add the time out, and I'm gonna specify, let's say I want this to be timeout in 2 seconds. If you specify a single number, then yeah, it will gonna be in a seconds. Okay. So sleep 3, it will gonna sleep for 3. However, timeout is specified in the 2, so it will gonna be timed out. I'm not gonna add this detail for now. It will gonna create some mess with these visuals. So let's move further here. You see, it says timeout occur while executing task 1. So if there is a timeout, then yeah, it will gonna be something like that. Let me move back towards the next. By default, yeah, by the way, by default the timeout, the period for each task is 1 day, one entire day. So moving back towards my VM, the next here after timeout is stop on error. So if there is any error, it will gonna be stopped execution instead of moving further. Let's move towards the practical approach. Here we go. I'm gonna add here, not here actually, yeah, here, stop on error. I'm gonna specify as true. I'll create one more task next to it. to explain this particular thing. This will be task 2. I'll keep it parallel false. Also this one parallel false. Now the task 1 is running and the stop on error right now it is specified as false. Okay, let me just keep it false as well. By default it is false. I'll just remove it and let's execute one to just see the differences. Nothing additional. Oops. Let me execute. It started with task 1. It will gonna sleep for 3 seconds. As there is a timeout, it will gonna move further. As the stop on error is mentioned as false. As soon as I make it as true, what it will gonna be doing? It will gonna be starting. As soon as it get any error, it will gonna be stop on error, and the error will gonna be displayed here. Error while waiting for container task 1, and here it is like a visuals only. But this gives you an idea about the sequence, right? Timeout. FTL is a fatal error that you'll get, saying that stop on error. It will gonna stop the process and stop everything. So I hope that makes sense. As soon as I just make it false, it will, even there is an error with this particular container, it will move further. See, there's an error, it will still move towards the next as a task 2, and so on and so forth. Let me go and check the next component, that is type. Now, not only just this type, we're gonna understand type, dynamic file, and dynamic range. By default, the type is static. Static is the one that we are executing so far. Dynamic is the next type that is optional, of course. What do I mean? Let's just go with the practical approach to get the further understanding. I'll navigate back to the code. Let me just remove few things from here. Oops. What I'm gonna do, I'll just gonna remove this timeout. That is no longer required. Even this task 2 is no longer required. Stop on error, it's fine, no longer required. Parallel is also no longer required. Only few things. And I want type. So there are two types. One is static and the next one is dynamic. Static is the default that we have used so far. When it comes to dynamic, it has two options. First one is dynamic file. Make sure that you specify the syntax uh, clear. It should not have any issues. Dynamic file is the one, and the next one is dynamic range. You cannot specify both together. Either you can specify dynamic file or you can specify dynamic range. That is important. So let me start with dynamic range. So it will gonna give you some idea. The dynamic range you can supply in a different ways. First way is this one, like 1 to 10. And let me just change the command from this to echo. And you can use this curly braces and specify this dynamic range as it is here. So what we're gonna do, it will start from first character till the last character. It will gonna echo everything. Why it is useful, we're gonna look later on, or you can even go through workflow why it is being used here. But yeah, this is what the initial idea. It will gonna echo from 1 to 10. It is on the random order, of course, but yeah, it will gonna be echo. Let me just execute that. And here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Perfect. It was clear. Of course, it is not random as we haven't used the important component here, that is thread. Now you can specify number of threads. For an example, right now by just using single thread, it took 6 point something seconds. Instead of that, if I use let's say 10 threads and do the same activity, it will gonna be much faster. As soon as it start, I guess there is a typo. Guess so. Uh, Threads. Yeah, there was a typo. Clear. Hitting enter, and this time it will gonna be no time. It was quite fast, of course, but as it was all parallel, let me change it to some different value. Let me keep it 3. Earlier it was 1, and this time it was 10. So 10 machine at a time booting up, it will gonna use some resources. So let me keep it something like 3, 4, some easier one. Yeah, perfect. It took somewhere 7 seconds. Looks more, but when it comes to the actual work, instead of just echoing back, then yeah, it works quite well and quite fast. So that was the one case. The next case was to use the dynamic file. So for dynamic file, it requires to have a file specified. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use this target here by just specifying again this curly braces. And instead of range, I'm gonna specify file. So I need to supply a file and it will gonna be performing whatever the activity. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just create one file. Let's say nano test.txt. It will gonna be, let's say, 1 2 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 and 1 0. It's just a line number, just a lines that or file content. And what I'm gonna do, I'll execute the same, but instead target here, I'm gonna supply that file test.txt. Now what we're gonna do, the test.txt will gonna be automatically replaced here. And by using this 3 threads or 2 threads, whatever it wants, it will gonna be performing the action. And instead of dynamic range here, it must be dynamic file. So on each line, it will gonna be executing 1 6 2 7 3 8 4 9. Whatever the line is, it will not gonna be static like one after another. When you use threads, if the thread is one, it will gonna be 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 and so on and so forth. But when it is not, then yeah, it will gonna be quite random. It will boot up, spin up that, and it will work like that. And for dynamic task, the output is quite different. So what you're gonna see here is for this particular, let's say, task one. You see this 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. So based on the number of file lines or number of range, the output will be different. So let me just remove everything. Sudo rm hyphen rf hive star, let's say. Let me just execute this. Perfect. Now you see this 1 2 3 4. For the first, let's say output does have whatever the output it could. Input 2 3 4 5 and so on and so forth till the 10. Even if it is range, then yeah, it will gonna be identical for the same. So that's being said, that is what the dynamic file and the dynamic range was. Let me just get the next by navigating through the workflow or flow chart here. Dynamic file is done, dynamic range is done, threads are done, mounts and inputs are the important factor. So let's start with the mount first. I'm gonna go back to my code. Here we go. And what I'm gonna do, I'm not gonna give you this dynamic thing for now because I want something simple to explain. And the echo, it will gonna echo, please subscribe, and it will gonna be output to, let's say, hiveout slash output dot txt. Now I'm gonna create one more task, and this task will gonna be task 2. This is not dynamic, so I'm not gonna keep it here. This is even not dynamic. I want the mount this time. The mounts is again a list of files, and you just have to specify the task name. So when you specify this task name, this task data will gonna be mounted to the next. The task one output will gonna be mounted to the next. Let me just give it a go here. I'm just gonna keep everything same. This file, I will gonna supply some commands, and it will gonna be echo whatever the output of this particular file from the task one. So what I'm gonna do, instead of echo, let me just do cat. It will be 3 times this time. When you mount something and you want that mount file to be referenced. So here, now this reference will gonna have two type of output. First is file. When you say file will gonna be something that is hive out and output.txt. When it comes to folder, this will gonna be just hive out of this particular task, that is task one slash output folder. This time I'll just gonna specify file because it is using the default output.txt, and that should be sufficient. So what I'm gonna do, I'll just execute this, and you'll find from first no output, but from second you'll find this please subscribe. So task one output can be easily changed to the task two, and that's quite helpful when you want to manage multiple things, right? So when it comes to folder and how it manage, so here if I navigate to this hive task 2 and inside it will gonna have the task 1 data. Of course it has some additional data that is not really important because we didn't clean up right earlier. So what we're gonna do, it will gonna be hive out slash out, it will gonna be hive out slash out and output.txt. It will gonna be saving as such. So this output file will gonna be included there inside the task 1. Yeah. So that's being said, this is how it works. The mounting works. If you want to supply folder, so this is how you can do inside folder. Let's say you didn't specify this output file name as output. So you want something like rubensiv.txt, then yeah, you can just copy this file and specify it here. So this will gonna be something identical. Start succeed. And yeah, there is an error, I guess. So yeah, you have to specify out. It cannot be just as it is. It has to be output or what folder that you want. Here from output rubensiv.txt, and here we go. Please subscribe has been added over there. This is how the mount works. And the next we was already aware about, it is nothing but inputs. What this input will gonna do? So let's understand that. Let me clean up first sudo rm-rf5 and let's do it. Inputs. Inputs is again list of can say list of different files or folders or URLs that you can specify here. List of strings basically. It will gonna automatically copy it to the input folder. For an example, I want, let's say for input, I want this file to be there. The file that we created, test.txt, this one. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna supply this input here, test.txt, or we can even supply that variable value. But let me just provide this test.txt for now, and let's see how it goes. Test.txt. What I'm gonna do, just gonna cat hive in, that is hive input folder, slash the file name, that is test.txt. If you want this file to be renamed, automatically renamed with something else like input.txt, you can use comma. If it has comma, then yeah, the next file name will gonna be used there. If I just change it here and execute the same, it will gonna be 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, whatever it was, right? And this is how it works, the inputs. You cannot just it cannot be just a single. You can even supply a URL, you can even supply a folder. For an example, let's say I want to include a particular folder that is let me create one, mkdir test, echo hello to test slash test.txt. And what I'm gonna do, I'll just gonna include that test here. So the test is nothing but a folder, right? Dot slash test slash, it's a folder. that you want, but for folder you cannot rename anything, so it will gonna be included there. And let me just give it a try. So hyphen, it will gonna be hyphen, and inside it will gonna be test, and inside test it will gonna be test.txt. Let me just give it a try. It should return hello, but let's see. As expected, it returned back with the word hello. So this is how it works. This is how input works. You can even supply HTTP URL. For an example, you have let me just quickly fix something. Sudo vim resolve, because I have some issues with my DNS resolver. I guess it is already fixed. It's all good to go. What I'm gonna do, I'll take any reference URL from the internet. For an example, some GitHub files. Come on, should have two. Just a minute, taking it out. Oh, okay. I think that's supposed to be fine. This is one of the example from parameter name. So what we're gonna do, this is nothing but a parameter name, list of parameter name to be brute force for the parameter discovery. And I just want it to be renamed with a particular name, that is wordless.txt. Now what I'm gonna do, I'll just not just a cat. What I'm gonna do, I'll just use wc-l to get the number of lines it has and wordlist.txt. Let me just quickly execute. This time it will gonna be take a little time based on the file size. And yeah, you see it did the work, it did the role within 2 point some seconds. And it has 6453 lines. That's nice. That's pretty fair. This is what all about this Task Ninja. Let me move back to my particular workflow or flowchart. Workflow flowchart, I would say, and we are aware about all the components. Similar to what we have used so far in the code, those are the placeholders like hive, hive in, hive out, host hive out, host hive in, dynamic file, dynamic range. Task name is the one that we used for pull out files and folders, and yeah, that is what it is. I hope that it makes sense to you, and this Task Ninja is something you find useful for your routine task. You can create your own workflow and do a lot of things. Multiple workflows you'll find over here. Of course, this table is not updated. I'll try to update it soon as possible, but you'll find some new workflows as well. The Discovery has one workflow 5 days ago within the subdomain. So the cert as such subdomain is not updated in the table. But yeah, what we're gonna do, it will gonna start with the cert sh, that is dynamic file, the list that you provide, that will gonna be domain name, apex domain or root domain. It will gonna loop through the file using 10 different threads. It will gonna save output into hive out and output folder, and in the result tab it will gonna merge everything. So you see cert sh folder. Let's start because it will gonna have multiple occurrence. So right now it has 10 threads and it could have like 100 or maybe thousands of folders. So in every folder it will gonna be saved inside out and output.txt. And this is how it works. It will gonna be sort for the unique and save it in the file. It will also count what are the number of lines. It will gonna also count, also show you that where the result is being saved, and it uses the host hive out, because as this output is saved inside the hive out, that is within the Docker, host hive out is the output folder for this particular task in the host machine, not inside the Docker. That is what difference of this hive out and host hive out. I hope that makes sense to you and that clarifies the use cases for the Task Ninja. And I'll look forward to find you creating some workflows, sharing across. And yeah, it took significant time for me to create this particular uh, thing. Also, I'd like to add something here in terms of course, some acknowledgement. So here, Task Ninja was inspired by Trickest. Trickest is the one platform that I used, and I found quite impressive. It uses, of course, the AWS, and it is costly. It uses AWS machines in order to perform those tasks by using Dockers, and the same concept, of course. And it is quite fast compared to what I have built. But again, this is quite costly too compared to what I can offer. Right? And this is open source. Secondly, rider tools from Devansh. I tried to reach out to him for some contribution, but I'm not sure he's happy to or he's willing to. But yeah, this is what the initial repository that I found. Something related to triggers. So after triggers, I want something for my own kind of automation. I found this, but it had multiple bugs, it had multiple improvements that are required, and it was executing everything on the host, which is not something suitable. So yeah, for that reason, I thought let's just create something, and I initiated this idea, created this particular concept of Docker thing, and created this automation tool that can help you. I hope that makes sense to you, and you found it useful for your learning. And if you find it useful, then yeah, hit this star and reach out to me over some social media and so on and so forth. That's it. That's all. See you next time.